Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Rich Sports Talk, your home for all the latest and greatest on the New York Jets. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Join us in the chat, type in your questions, your thoughts, and comments. And of course, if you want to donate to the channel and make sure you jump to the front of the line, use that super chat feature and want to take us on the go when we're not live. You can listen to every episode of Rich Sports Talk wherever podcasting is available. We are officially here on cut day. Now, again, the NFL rules state that the Jets had to get down to 53 by 4 o'clock today, but it will be a trickling of players coming out. Again, full disclosure will come around 8 o'clock tonight, but I thought I'd jump on the channel now, go over some of the initial cuts, some interesting cuts around the league the Jets could potentially be interested, and of course, giving you all the latest. Of course, the latest cut, it appears, in the last half hour was Donovan Edwards. Now, again, a lot of these cuts, it seems like Donovan Edwards especially is going to be someone that is going to be a high priority for the Jets to keep on their practice squad. Again, the Jets with the running back gymnastics, it appears that they're going to keep Beck as the fullback. Nwangu, of course, the excellent returner, did play well at the running back position. So again, I know a lot of Jet fans were really pulling for Donovan Edwards. I've especially heard you here on the channel. But as of right now, he has been waived, but again, it seems like he will be a high priority for the Jets. Of course, some big surprises around the league. Cole Strange, the former first rounder from the New England Patriots, was cut moments ago. And of course, we will give you all the latest. So let's look at some of the key Jets that have been cut. Because again, if you're just joining us, and again, super chat, jump to the front of the line, get in the comment section. Let's go over some of the Jets cuts. Quinn and Skinner was a surprise cut, but it seems like the Jets are, like a lot of these guys, going to try to keep him on the roster. Carter Warren, the offensive tackle. Now, again, we heard the rumors that the Jets were looking to trade Warren. Again, I think they would have liked to, but I give Darren Mucci credit, trading Nandi back to the Chiefs for a 7th-round pick, which I thought was very well done. Other big cuts, Brandon Smith. So apparently Alan Lazard will be starting and is not going on the short-term IR like we thought. He probably will be a high priority to come back. Jarek Bernard-Converse is the biggest surprise to me. Had a really good camp, but again, an incredibly talented corner room. It appears that the Jets are going a different direction. Might be a priority to get back. I think he'll be a hard one to get through waivers. Eric Watts, the defensive end, someone that I was very high on. I thought that Eric Watts had a decent shot to make this roster. Jamin Davis, obviously, was someone that we thought was going to be on this roster. He was cut as well. But there is a lot of people to keep an eye on, a lot of quarterbacks for potential depth to keep an eye on around the league, a potential trade, and, of course, some interesting tight ends, but we'll get into in a sec. But obviously, the biggest cut for the Jets today and what we'll be talking about is Malachi Corley. So Malachi Corley, of course, the 3rd-round pick from the Jets. We saw all the videos about how much Aaron Rodgers loved Malachi Corley. We saw the draft day memes from the Jets saying Malachi Corley no matter what. Joe Douglas talked about how he was the 4th receiver on their board above Brian Thomas, which, of course, looks great in retrospect, and that they were trying to trade up. To me, Malachi Corley is a cautionary tale because Malachi Corley, I'll get to the player in a second, but if Aaron Glenn and Darren Mucci need to learn something from a previous regime or take a lesson from the previous regime, it is not to overhype a player. Yes, be excited about the players you draft. That is fine. But don't go out of your way to tell your fan base how much higher on the board he was than other players, how you were desperate to get him and try to trade. Because if it does not work, it will blow up horribly. And look, did Malachi Corley cost Joe Douglas's job? No, but it was a major part of it. It had to be because Malachi Corley has had as many catches, 3, as he has jersey numbers with the Jets, 3. Not exactly ideal. Now let's get to the player. I've been someone on this channel, and again, being more of an optimistic Jet fan, I was hoping that there could be a role for Malachi Corley. My opinion was this was a guy that could be used as a special teams weapon, be used in this running game as a jet sweeper, some Deebo Samuel type of receiver, where you didn't necessarily use him as a receiver, but used him almost like as a hybrid running back. But more has come out from Connor Hughes, and I have to give Connor a lot of credit. He's done an unbelievable job covering Malachi Corley's story, and he brought up a lot on this channel when I asked him about Malachi Corley and how even the previous staff, Robert Saleh, and that coaching staff was disturbed about the lack of accountability, especially after the famous fumble on the goal line. But it's come out since that Malachi Corley was refusing to play special teams, didn't want to play special teams, which, again, I thought would have been a great position for him on the kick return as well. And the big story that Connor really revealed was when Davante Adams first got to the Jets, of course, at the time, Malachi Corley was number 17, and Davante Adams offered him money for it. And basically, he was giving Davante a hard time. And look, I understand players get attached to numbers. I understand players want to keep their numbers. But that was a situation where you're a rookie. You have a veterans coming in. He's going to pay you money and over $100,000 to just change your number. And even if he is here for like 2 or 3 seasons, you can get that number back or make a different number. I mean, look, Will McDonald's changed his number a couple times too. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but it was to him. He made a big deal about it, and it's clearly not worked out well. And looking back, it almost feels like Corley was cut even before we got to preseason. Like, it just seems like this coaching staff just had to keep him on the roster, barely played in the preseason. And I just always felt, too, with the stories you heard about Corley, it wasn't going to work with this coaching staff that prides itself on competing, about toughness. And Malachi Corley was refusing to play special teams. It's just frustrating. And look, I understand it's frustrating as a Jet fan because we've seen the third-round picks, and it has been horrible for third-round picks for the Jets in the last 10 years. And it's hard to see you whiff on a player like that. And I get it's painful. It's rough. You want your players that you draft to be good. But I always say this too. With a new regime, you're going to have a new staff. You're going to have new opinions. Don't be surprised if certain players, especially higher draft picks, get cut because they don't fit the new scheme. It's frustrating because you feel like the Jets wasted a third-round pick. It's frustrating that it's another wide receiver miss. It's frustrating that this was a guy that I think a lot of us had high hopes on, especially with how much this coaching staff hyped him up, how much Aaron Rodgers hyped him up. And I'm making a prediction right now that Malachi Corley will likely be picked up by the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think Allen Lazard will end up there eventually, but Malachi Corley was someone that Aaron Rodgers really liked. It seems like someone that the Steelers can get at a league minimum, put him in as the 5th receiver in that room. It would not shock me if he is a member of the Steelers in short order. Again, comments, your thoughts on the Jets cuts, players you'd like to see them potentially target. I'm just checking Twitter because, again, there's a lot of information coming in. I'm just making sure that I am not missing any breaking ones that have happened with the Jets. Miko Harmon, former Jet, was cut by the Packers. Corley, again, not a shock for me that he was cut. But look, just checking to make sure that no other news has come down the wire. And again, we went through some of the cuts from the Jets. Malachi Corley, Carter Warren, Quinton Skinner, Brandon Smith, Jarek Bernard-Converse, Eric Watts, Jamin Davis are a couple of the big ones. So before we get to potential trades, because I know there's a certain receiver on the market right now, and I'll give my two cents on that in a second. I do think there's some interesting free agents on the market. Let's look at a position that apparently the Jets are already looking to target, and that is the tight end position. Now, it's been reported that they're really in on Jelani Woods, the 6'7" tight end from the Colts, a former high draft pick. Here's the issue with Woods. Despite having some flashes, he's had a lot of injury issues. But again, being a number 2 tight end, maybe that helped take some pressure off. A big body, can move people. I think he's someone to keep an eye on. But I also think there's another interesting tight end who just so happens to be across the stadium who was just cut. That's tight end Greg Dulcich from the Giants. Now, had a very good preseason. Again, I understand the preseason stats aren't everything, but had the most touchdowns in the preseason. 25-year-old tight end. But here is why I think Dulcich could be in play for the Jets. Who was the team that drafted him? It was the Denver Broncos. Maybe there's something there with Darren Muji. We don't know. Darren Muji, we know, was in that building with the scouting department. Could he have been a player that was on his radar? Is he a skill set that he really liked? I'm just saying, like, we talk about certain players from Detroit coming over to the Jets for Aaron Glenn, but I do think Muji, it's someone to keep an eye on. Greg Dulcich from the Giants, again, still 25 years old, young player with a former third-round pick for the Broncos. And look, I feel like this Jet tight end room outside of Mason Taylor is wide open right now. I mean, I think Stone Smart has shown some flashes. Jeremy Ruckert had a rough training camp, but those are two guys that I would keep an eye on as well. Again, comments coming in, super chat, jump to the front of the line. Let me get to a couple of your comments, and then we'll look at some trade options and potential free agents. Tony Alexa wants the Martinez Parkets back. And Scott Foster, it's a good day. Corley's gone. Look, I'm of the opinion, too, that with Corley, it's addition by subtraction. And let me just say this about Malachi Corley. I hope that he figures it out. Sometimes being a higher draft pick, I think, gets in these players' heads. And college football's changed a lot, too. Now players are getting paid. Players are getting promotions. I think a lot of now players are going to come in with a bigger ego of themselves, like you saw with Shedeur Sanders. And I think that they're going to have this ego that NFL teams aren't going to love necessarily. And I think Malachi Corley, especially with how much he was being gassed up by Hall of Famer Aaron Rodgers, how much he was being gassed up by this coaching staff and this front office, got a big head of his. He's like, yeah, I'm a great receiver, even though he did nothing in this league. I kind of look at it as like Mekhi Becton a little bit. Mekhi Becton, again, high draft pick, first-round pick, wanted to play tackle. It was only until he was cut and it's like, okay, your NFL career's on the line, that he was humbled and moved to guard. Now you look at Malachi Corley, you hope that this is a lesson. It's a painful lesson. It's a huge financial lesson. But look, I hope the kid can figure it out, and I hope he can figure it out with someone else. Cut Butterfinger, Gibson, and Lazard. I think Gibson will likely be a cut, especially with Nwangu being on this team. Again, one of the cuts that happened is Pritchett. Pritchett, again, has been a good punt returner. I think he makes this roster. Lazard is a weird one because, again, they want Lazard, I think, because he's a good blocker. You look at just – I mean, it feels like the Jets have multiple number 3 receivers. There's no true 2. It almost feels like they're keeping him just because he's a veteran. I'm still of the belief he's going to end up in Pittsburgh in some capacity, but it does seem like he's going to start the season with the Jets. Yeah, Scott, I mean, that's fair. I feel the fan base gassed him up, and I think, again, I was part of that. And I think a lot of me was optimistic, and I looked at it a different way. I didn't look at Corley as being a true number 2 receiver like I think some people did. I looked at him more as a guy that you could use a unique skill set, a fast player that was good in space. I saw him being a Deebo Samuel type. And when I say type, I mean someone that you can use on jet sweeps, getting him running in space, getting him quick across the middle of the field so he has the chance to make a defender miss and make a big play. That's how I thought he could be used. And I also thought he could be a great weapon on the kick return game. And unfortunately, again, I was wrong. I remember at the time, didn't love the pick. I was someone of the opinion that, okay, it's got some talent. I think that you looked after the big 4 in that draft. And then when they were starting to put him up in that big 4, I'm like, I don't know if I'd put him up in the big 4, but, look, Skinner, I do think they're going to try to keep on the practice squad. I do think he's going to be a high priority. The big thing, too, is I think part of the roster gymnastics that we see right now is who are guys you think that will make it through the waivers. And again, Skinner had a really good camp, but I don't think there's necessarily going to be a huge market for him. I think he's still an undrafted receiver. He's still someone that is still – I just don't see There could be a team that takes a shot on him. There obviously are teams doing their due diligence throughout the preseason, but it just doesn't seem like there's going to be a ton of a market for him, Tony. So I think that is what they are looking for there. Brick said last season his maturity was a problem. Turns out to be true. Yeah, and it was maturity. And Connor, I talked about on this channel, he didn't take accountability for the fumble. He didn't seem to be humbled by it. Didn't seem to understand how bad of a moment that was. And unfortunately, as I get to your next question, Jackson Sermon going to make it. I'm not going to fully say that. I think maybe the practice squad. I don't think he's going to make it. Another big surprise, Thomas Morstead cut by the 49ers. That surprised me for the punting game. That's a big one as well. Yeah, I'm just checking right now to make sure no other cuts have come through right now. Dean Clark, another cut for the Jets. Again, highly productive safety. That was a little bit of a surprise to me. I thought Clark had a Tony with a lot of comedy right there, saying Gibson gives me heartburn when he's returning kicks. Like, to me, Clark was one of the guys that seemed the staff was very high. And again, I think it's one of those guys that they're going to bring on the practice squad. I'm kind of curious to see what the safety rotation is going to be. I'm also surprised what the defensive end room is going to be. Eric Watts cut. Does this mean McGregor staying? Like, again, I'm curious to see how they do this roster gymnastics. I mean, the big one to me is Lazard, though, because I think a lot of us felt Lazard was going to be on the short-term IR to start the season when he's clearly not. So keep having those questions and comments coming in. Super chat, jump to the front of the line. Couple of other options out there. I know Jacoby Myers has requested a trade for the Raiders. I think he'd be a great number 2. The problem is I just don't see this regime giving up draft capital. I could see a team really going hard after him and giving multiple picks. A lot of teams are in the wide receiver market, but again, I think the Jets should at least make the calls on Myers. I'm also curious to see, too, this because there's some interesting quarterback out there for the third quarterback on the practice squad. Kyle McCord, a kid I liked in the draft, got cut by the Eagles. I also saw Dorian Robinson got cut from them as well. More of a mobile quarterback, could fit there potentially as well as a long-term backup. Again, a lot of it comes down to Tyrod Taylor's health. Tommy DeVito was cut by the Giants, but I wouldn't go near Tommy DeVito. I don't think he really fits the scheme that the Jets are running. And, I just don't think it'd be a great fit with Tommy DeVito. I do think one thing to keep an eye on, especially with the defensive end room, and I brought it up in the last one, is Za'Darius Smith from the Lions. He's still out there. It kind of feels like could be easily a one-year contract, rotational defensive end. I think if they brought in Za'Darius Smith, you would feel a lot better about the defensive end rotation. I think you'd be okay. I don't love Michael Clemens, but early runs, stopping downs, having him be your 4th defensive end isn't the worst thing in the world. I just really don't like him being the 3. It's like with the defensive tackle trades, you move everyone down a little bit and you feel more comfortable with Sam Cowart being your 4th or 5th defensive tackle, not necessarily your number 2 or 3 defensive tackle. So I'm definitely curious to see how that goes. Carter Warren, again, a bit of a surprise. I was, again, kind of hoping he spent a 4th-round pick on a tackle. It's Max Mitchell stays. I almost thought Mitchell would be more likely to be cut, but it seems like Mitchell's ability to play guard and tackle, even though it's not great, is one of the reasons he's able to stay on the roster. Again, let me get to your comments in a second. I'm just checking. Just constantly refreshing, just to see if any new cuts. Now, again, guys, I'm keeping an eye on this as well. So if you do see any breaking news that I missed, just let me know. Another interesting player I'd keep an eye on would be 5th-round pick from 2024, Brennan Jackson, the edge from the Rams, played a bit of that outside linebacker defensive end. Was 2nd in sacks in the preseason. Again, I know not the greatest stat, but I do think he showed some pass rush bursts, and it just feels like on the outside that the Jets don't necessarily have that depth, especially at the edge position. So that is someone I would definitely keep an eye on and maybe kick the tires as well. but just keeping an eye on here, just making sure no. That's the thing. Like so many breaking things happened during our live streams on here. We've broken so many live news for the Jets. I'm just making sure that I'm not missing anything. Again, the Jets have had their fair share of cuts come out, but not everything right now. So we'll keep an eye on that as well. All right, let's get to back to your comments. Let's see. McCord is too raw. Look, again, if you're going to stash him on the practice squad, though, I don't think that's a bad idea. I'm not saying to make him the backup, but to store him on the practice squad. The last season of thought Clement would be on this team this year. Look, that is definitely something I agree with. I think every Jet fan, but unfortunately, it just seems like to me that this Jet team made the decision to try to fill as many holes as possible. And unfortunately, they didn't have enough time to get to the defensive end position. And look, I think one of the bigger problems with this first draft, and again, when you're looking at the draft process, a lot of the scouts for Joe Douglas were still here. Again, just because of the turnover. You saw after the draft, the Jets really redid the whole scouting department. You always feel like, especially when you're first-time GM, it's easier for the top 2 days because you're able to gauge the top 50, 75 prospects better. It always feels like, especially for GMs, the first drafts on day 3 are always the rough ones. Now, look, the Jets made 2 trades on day 3, and I'm not a huge guy on day 3 to trade. My philosophy is this: if you think there's a day 2 graded player at the top of the 4th round, go up and get him. If not, I'm trying to trade back and get as many picks and as many draft picks as possible and looking down the road to get as many as I can. I think Darren Muji's doing a good job getting a lot of 7th rounders, again, cherry on top type of moves in a trade. But I just think that the biggest miss of the draft right now is Tyler Barron. Because not only did the Jets draft him, I think, hoping he would be a rotational pass rusher in this scheme, they traded up to get him. Now, here's why I have a problem. They traded up for Malachi Moore. That, though, has seemed to make sense because, again, he could play in the box, had a rough first preseason game. I thought played a lot better in the last preseason game. It's clear with Malachi Moore that this team has a plan to use him. Say what you will about Arian Smith, but it does seem like this team has a plan to use him. The problem is with me, the 5th round players, it doesn't seem like this team really has a plan for them, especially with Barron. And Barron, to me, was one of those fringe defensive end guys. And I think once you pat rounds 5 through 7, a lot of these players are basically, you hope they can make the roster. He was a guy that I thought was more at the bottom of the draft, like maybe more of a priority free agent type. But they drafted him in the 5th round, and they also traded up. And unfortunately, it hasn't worked out so far. Maybe it will work out in the long run, but so far the early returns is not dividend. DeVito is a proven backup. Tyler Chow is an unreliable backup with injuries. He's, again, I get the injuries. Tommy DeVito, I'm very curious. The only thing, though, is the thing with Tommy DeVito, though, is if he went to a different team, I think it'd be one thing. He has such a passionate fan base in New York. And again, we saw it with Shedeur. You don't want the backup quarterback to be getting a lot of the press. And it almost feels like there's a portion of DeVito fans that would come over from the Giants if he became the backup or Tyrod got hurt and Justin Fields is struggling, clamoring for Tommy DeVito. And look, I think Tommy DeVito is right, Tony. I think he's proven he is a backup in this league, but I'm just not sure if it would be a great fit with the Jets. So, I mean, I'm not a fan of bringing DeVito in here, but I believe in freedom. Again, it's just a possibility. Unlike JD Mujidra's promised a D tackle before the season, run stuffers are here. Yeah, like I just look at that and I go, I think if he had addressed this in the spring and done the same moves, we would have been extremely happy. Again, I don't love the timing necessarily, but I do like how they knew they had a need. They got a starting caliber player next to Quinnen and Phillips. and they got a guy who's a good rotational piece who they think is an ascending player. So he is someone that I would definitely keep an eye on. I do really like how they've addressed the needs and didn't sit on their hands. Like, it felt like too many times, especially with Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh, like it was, we're going to make our guys work. It doesn't matter. We're going to make this work no matter what. And sometimes you're like, okay, that's great, but the guys you have here aren't really great. So Dolchek is more of a receiver, Scott, 245 pounds, a bit on the light side. The thing I like about him, though, is, again, I know Stone Smart, more of a receiver. He's someone, the reason I keep an eye on him, I don't think he's the Jets' number one target. I think their number one target is Jelani Woods. Again, 6'7", monster athlete. Again, the durability has been his biggest issue. The only reason I bring up Dolchek is just because he was a Bronco pick in the third round in 2022. And Darren Muji was a big part of that building. And maybe he's one of the guys that banged the table for him and said, this is a guy we really want. So again, when I look at the NFL, I always look at these little connections, and they're very important. I mean, there's certain guys that followed, obviously, Aaron Glenn from Detroit here. You always look at those connections. It's like in jobs. You know, the connections you have with people often result in you getting jobs or getting opportunities by knowing certain people. So when I look at Dolchek and just his past with the Broncos, I think there could be something there. And again, had a very productive preseason with the Giants. And again, I know it's the preseason, but I also look at it too. If they think he's a dynamic offensive pass catcher, the Jets are lacking pass catchers. Maybe you can't upgrade necessarily the wide receiver room, but you can upgrade the passing production in your tight end room. And I understand fans might not like it, but it looks like the defensive tackle room. We've been screaming for edges and we've been screaming for defensive tackles. I don't love the Jets' edge position, but they at least address the defensive tackle position to make the line better. So when I look at the pass catching situation, maybe they can't improve the wide receivers, but they can improve the tight ends and the pass catching ability that the tight ends can bring here as well. So far, it doesn't appear to be Tony again. It's slowly trickling out. My guess is he won't be cut. Again, I'm just refreshing just when I say that. So I'm just making sure that I'm not missing anything here because, again, a lot of breaking news coming through. But if I had to guess, I would say that he's on this team. A lot of it also comes down to, can they get a tight end? Like if they can get a tight end that they like better than Rucker, maybe he does get cut. Maybe he's a late cut. But right now it appears he's on this team. There doesn't seem to be any new updates right now from the Jets. A lot of these updates came about around noon today, 1 o'clock. It does appear that obviously we're waiting on more cuts to come out. It was one of those things too, like when I'm doing this show and this recording right now, part of the reason I wanted to do this was to go over the initial cuts, potential moves. But the other thing I was kind of hoping would be at this time, more of it would be finalized. It appears that hasn't happened. But again, we'll be back and keeping an eye on all week, any potential moves the Jets make, any moves like adding players, making potential trades. So I do think that's something to definitely keep an eye on. Yes, he is more of a Stone Smart type in terms of Dolchek. But questions in the stream, thoughts on the cuts so far? It's kind of funny because a part of me also wants to end this maybe a little bit early, just because knowing my luck, the same that that if we end this early, that all of a sudden then there'll be multiple cuts come out and we'll get that news. But until then, we're just waiting. And I understand that a lot of people are frustrated with some of the players that have been released, especially in the wide receiver room. Yeah, I understand that as well. But I just look at this and I go, okay, they are keeping Lazard. I think Lazard's the big outlier in here, because if Lazard went on the short-term IR, at least it looked like they'd carry one of these young receivers. But it looks like as of now, Lazard's going to play week 1. I, again, don't think he's going to be on the Jets long-term, but it seems like he's at least going to start the season with the team. And it's one of those things, too, where since he's on this team, it's a trickle-down effect, and it means, okay, the Jets aren't going to carry an extra young wide receiver. And I understand it's frustrating because we know what Allen Lazard is. He's a better soccer player than a pass catcher at this point. But good blocker, has had experience in this league, has had productive years in this league. And I think that is why this team is going to at least roll with him at the start. And they feel that these guys they can bring back on the practice squad. Now, I think that there's also not exactly a huge market for fringe receivers right now. Again, we know the Jets have said that they're in the wide receiver market. I just don't think you're going to see many wide receivers get moved. And if they do, it's going to be for more of a premium than, we're just exchanging 5th-round picks. So I'm very curious to see how the Jets will continue to look at this. Again, some surprise cuts. My biggest one was Jarek Bernard-Converse, who I thought had a great camp. Carter Warren wasn't a surprise, made 6 starts in his career. You could tell from where he was on the depth chart, though, that he didn't really have a shot. Jets have also added multiple tackles. They've upgraded again. So it's funny because the Giants 45 minutes ago gave the official 53-man roster. Right now, we are currently just waiting on the Jets, which, again, my reaction is the Jets are going to probably wait until the last minute. Part of the reason teams are doing this, too, is potentially competitive advantage to try to get guys onto the practice squad or sign. It seems like Ryan Clark's son's already signed to the Jets practice squad. But I'm just waiting to see who they might go after right now. Again, I know they were looking to trade Carter Warren, but obviously, my favorite was they're looking to trade into teams that need offensive tackle depth. And I think every Jet fans was like, some team's going to trade for him. Okay. So I just never really saw that happening. I felt he was going to get cut. Max Mitchell seemingly has survived as well. And look, there's going to be some surprise. Jamin Davis was someone that I was really surprised with. I thought he played pretty well this preseason. I thought he would be at the top of the linebacking depth chart. But, a lot of this, too, is speculation. We have to look at how they want to build this team. And special teams comes into play, how they're going to build a special teams roster, how their scheme's going to be, how they're going to utilize certain players. I mean, Eric Watts, maybe they felt that after adding all that extra beef on the interior, they didn't need him to set the edge, and they're looking for more of a pass rusher here. So maybe that's why they might favor, let's say, Braden McGregor over Eric Watts on the edge. That's certainly a reason. And again, we'll have to see how this team builds out this line, both on the offense, defensive side of the football. Again, comments below, your thoughts on the Jets cut day, super chat to jump to the front of the line. Give me your thoughts. I would love to hear what you have to say here. Again, Scott Foster and Tony Alexio doing a lot of the heavy lifting early. Always appreciate the comments as well. But again, it seems like the Jets have released a lot of their initial cuts, but it does appear like they are going to not fully reveal all the cuts. I know one of the big ones recently was Donovan Edwards, but I do think the Jets, part of this too is the roster gymnastics where I think they're looking to go, okay, Donovan Edwards, we have a really good shot to get him back. Let's see. Interesting news from Jeremy Fowler 10 minutes ago involving the Patriots. The Patriots got multiple trade offers for safety Kyle Duggar. However, despite a $9.75 million guaranteed salary and how much of it New England would absorb, it was a hurdle. For now, he's on the 53, so that's a guy to keep an eye on. I don't see the Patriots ever trading Duggar to the Jets, but that's definitely someone that can be to keep an eye on as well. Again, I'll also give my reaction later this week to the rivalry uniforms, which are coming out. I'll be honest, I'm not I don't think these rivalry uniforms are going to be great. I mean, just wear throwback uniforms or try something a little bit different. But I'm very curious to see how that will come out and how they will look. So just checking to make sure. And again, it's tough because again, I'm not reading your comments right away. A lot of it I keep checking Twitter because I'm just like, the Jets, knowing my luck, are going to have like a big release or make a trade when I either go off the air or when I'm not looking. I think he is going to be a keeper, Tony. And again, I think he had a solid preseason, but I don't think he like blew everyone away this preseason. My holy king, Jets, Jets. And, like I also am curious too, like, will they go out and look for one of these quarterbacks? There's been some extremely intriguing guys that have been cut. And look, I know we don't like the Reynolds-Lazar pairing at wide receiver, but another interesting one, Panthers have released Hunter Renfrow. That's a weird one. Again, I would definitely keep an eye on Myers if they can get a right price. But, I mean, Hunter Renfrow, I just don't think it would be a great fit for the Jets. Beanie Bishop, another big one, released from the Steelers, 4 interceptions last season with the Steelers. That's a bit of a surprise. That might be someone the Jets keep an eye on too. I didn't think Cisco had the greatest camp, so I'm definitely curious to see who they go after. A lot of this too is I think the Jets are waiting on the cuts right now because they're trying to see if they can maybe get an extra player or two, and if they do, that obviously impacts the roster and who you're going to keep and who you're going to move off of as well. So again, a lot of movement in the next coming hours. And again, we'll have a lot more for you this week as this week drags on. We'll see what other moves the Jets make. We'll talk about the rivalry uniform set. But again, want to hear your thoughts on the initial Jets cut from the cut day. Again, for those of you who are just joining us, Jets have cut Quentin Skinner, Carter Warren, Malachi Corley, Brandon Smith, Jarek Bernard-Converse, Eric Watts, Jamin Davis, among others. It does seem like this team has significant interest in Colts tight end Jelani Woods, who was cut. Huge 6'7" athletic build, has had some very big splash plays in his career. However, has had multiple injury issues, so I'm curious what they do there. A name I keep an eye on is tight end Greg Dulcich from the Giants, former third-round pick. And the reason I think, even though he's more of a pass catcher, I would keep an eye on him because he was initially drafted by the Broncos, and Darren Muji was a part of that team. And again, another name to keep an eye on is Za'Darius Smith, the former edge from the Lions, still a free agent. Like, to me, if they were to sign Smith, and even if he takes a step back with his age at 32, I still would feel a lot better about the depth at the defensive end position. Just if you could say like Za'Darius Smith is your number 3 end and Michael Clemens is your 4, you feel a whole lot better, in my opinion, about your defensive end room than saying, well, Michael Clemens is our number 3 option, our first option after injury. Not exactly great. But again, guys, thank you so much for joining us here on the program. Final thoughts coming in. Make sure to get those final questions and thoughts in now. Super chat to jump to the front of the line. Again, we'll pay back more this week as, again, a lot of roster gymnastics as we get ready for the regular season. Again, make sure to like and subscribe so you'll miss our live streams after every Jets home game and away game. Again, I don't know why I keep messing that up. I keep having the Freudian slip. It's after every Jets game, so let me do it that way. Every Jets game will come on live, break down the tape, break down everything, our thoughts on the game. And basically, like I've said in the last 15 years, this is basically great Jets therapy for what Jet fans have been going through. But final thoughts, final questions, bring them in now. Again, you can like and subscribe so we can get this out to as many Jet fans, again, as many Jet fans in our chats as possible. Also, make sure to follow us wherever podcasts are available if you miss us during the live stream as well. So it is, I think one of the bigger surprises to me was Dean Clark. I thought Dean Clark had a great camp. It seemed like he was moving to being on the 53 roster. I was a bit surprised. Eric Watt's a little bit surprised as well. But after the Jets with their recent trades to boost the run defense, it's clear that they have made a big emphasis on the interior for the run defense. So maybe that's why they looked at the edge position. You're like, okay, maybe we can go with more of a lighter McGregor pass rusher on the edge. But again, there's still a lot to come out right now. We're still waiting on all the cuts. A lot of cuts have come out as well. Let's see. Just making sure that there's no other breaking news. Big news for Mets fans. Jonah Tong was called up today, which is an exciting for your Met fan. Just making sure. Yeah. So again, Jets also posted on the O-line. They had Olu mic'd up, and look, I'll tell you one thing. The Jets might struggle early with pass blocking, especially with two very young tackles, but it's clear that they like to move people, and especially in the run game. I think the Jets are going to be a major problem just pushing people around in that run game. And, the biggest story of the day, again, it's not a surprise. Malachi Corley cut from the Jets, and what will likely be one of the bigger misses for Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh. Again, there's a lot of misses. Obviously, Zach Wilson is a miss, but in retrospect, it's kind of like, well, what other quarterback would they have taken in that class? It wasn't a good one. And the one thing I would say too, and I started the show off with this, was if Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji want to learn one thing from the previous regime, don't gas up players too much. I think part of the problem with Corley is this is someone that had an ego, and it got inflated because this coaching staff kept saying, we had him at the top of our wide receiving board. We had him ahead of who the 20th pick in the draft was. We kept trying to trade up. We kept trying to get him. We know how good he was. We did the draft day thing where it's like Malachi Corley no matter what. And Aaron Rodgers, I think, gassed him up a lot. And unfortunately, when he made a mistake, he didn't take accountability. I think that rubbed the coaching staff the wrong way. Now you get a new coaching staff that comes in. He doesn't want to play special teams. And I think they pretty quickly just decided, you know what? We're going to move on. All right, I'll get you some Giants takes in there, little Jordan. Again, I haven't got a lot of requests for Giants content, but I'll give you my thoughts. I'll get my friend Craig Sawicki involved too with Wick's Picks. If you haven't checked out his channel, go check it out. He does a lot of great Giants content. That's actually a good idea. Let me try to see if I can get some Giants content on here this week. And I'll give you a little bit of Giants content now, little Jordan. They come out with their initial 53. I do like how the Eagles did their reveal. They have all the players in their numbers. I think that was a really cool deal. But look, I'll definitely get more Giants content on this channel as well. We'll get more regular content here as well. We've been doing a lot of uniform content, which again, something I'm very passionate and excited about as well. So again, we'll have a lot of great content on this channel, a lot of Jets content, but of course, we're looking to branch out with other content as the channel continues to expand. And again, if there's certain content that you would like to see on the channel, make sure to put it in the comments so I can see it. I read all the comments. So again, I really appreciate the feedback because you guys give me some unbelievable feedback and great ideas going forward. And look, I think for the Giants, it's going to be a tough season. The biggest thing for them is don't screw up Jackson Dart. Don't throw him in before he's ready. And I think my biggest fears are going to do that before he's ready. But final thoughts on the Jets. Yes, it's frustrating. Malachi Corley no longer on this team, but it's clear that he didn't have a role. One guy that I would like to see, again, maybe it's just because I was a huge fan of his out of college, Chad Muma out of Iowa has been released by the Jaguars. He was a third-round pick. He's someone that I was really wanted the Jets, still a young linebacker. I'd give him a call if I was, again, I'm not the GM. That's just me putting on my own GM hat, but that's someone that I definitely would like to see them definitely at least kick the tires on. I think he's someone to definitely keep an eye on. Hunter Renfrow released. I don't think he really gets looked at. I just don't think he would be a great fit for this team. But I know the big one has been Jacoby Myers. Would love it. I just don't think he's going to be in the Jets' price range. And again, I don't see this regime outside of moving late day 3 picks or swapping or accumulating picks. I really, really do not see this team going out of their way to, go out there as well. But again, let me just check to make sure. Again, I was just on Twitter right now. Again, thank you. Appreciate it, little Jordan. Always great to hear from you as well. I definitely will do that. Yeah, I think he's needed, my holy king. I think he's going to be highly used in the passing game. And look, the thing is, you want him to be good this year, because if he's good, spoiler alert, it means the Jets will be a better team for it. If he's not good this year, then it hurts the Jets and their chances for the playoffs. So look, you want him to be. Look, I want to see a little bit more from Breece Hall? Last year, it was clear he got nicked up, but I want to see him be used by a team that's going to run the football. I think under Rodgers, it was just a mess of how they used him, and I'm very curious to see how this new staff will use him. And look, I mean, we'll also tell too, because I think the staff is going to lean with the hot hand, even though they're going to run a lot of heavy 2 running backs. We saw in Detroit, the Detroit Lions had that 2-headed monster. I mean, there is a world where I see Braylon Allen getting more, quote, touches as a running back, but then I also see Breece Hall getting manufactured touches as a receiver. So maybe Breece Hall doesn't have 1,000 yards rushing, but he has over 1,000 yards of multi-purpose yards, because he has, like, let's say if Breece Hall has like 750 yards on the ground, spring with a couple touchdowns, but also has 400 or 500 yards receiving for over 1,200 yards of offense, I'm still going to be very happy with that and that production. But we are here for Jets Cut Down Day. We went over the biggest cuts so far, and again, it is far from over, and we will have a lot more Jets content as the week comes on. We'll also have some Giants content for you as well in the coming days. Again, guys, if you're new to the channel, like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our content. Make sure to check us out on podcasts, wherever podcasts are available, SoundCloud, Spotify, TuneIn, Spreaker. If you can listen to a podcast, you can listen to us. Again, guys, thank you so much for joining us here on Rich Sports Talk. Make sure to comment ideas for future videos in below if you'd like to see them, or questions that I can answer on the next live stream. And again, make sure to like, subscribe so you don't miss our live streams. And also give us a like too, because guess what? It means more great fans can join our videos. Thanks so much for joining us here today on Rich Sports Talk. We will see you next time.